I woke up in a hospital bed, blood seeping through my bandages, and my parents were gone. Not to get help, but to attend my sister's engagement party. My surgeon walked in, and when he saw who I was, his face went completely white. How did the man who just saved my life turn out to be the husband I thought I'd lost forever? I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. My name is Amelia Garcia, and I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd end up abandoned in a hospital room, bleeding and alone. But life has a funny way of proving you wrong about everything you thought you knew about the people you love. It started 3 weeks ago on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at my desk at Henderson Marketing Agency in downtown Seattle, going through client proposals when my phone buzzed. It was my mom, Lucy. "Amelia, honey, we need you to come home this weekend," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone that meant this wasn't a request. "Mom, I've got a huge presentation on Monday. Can it wait? It's about Chloe's engagement party. We need to finalize some details, and you know how important this is to your sister." Of course it was about Chloe. My younger sister had gotten engaged 2 months ago to Brandon Whitmore, some hedge fund manager she'd met at a charity gala. Since then, our family's entire universe had revolved around wedding planning, engagement parties, and making sure everything was absolutely perfect for Chloe's big day. "I'll try to make it work," I said, already feeling the familiar weight of obligation settling on my shoulders. "You'll do more than try, Amelia. Family comes first. You know that." I hung up and stared at my computer screen, trying to refocus on work. But something had been nagging at me for weeks now. A sharp, persistent pain in my lower right abdomen that came and went without warning. I'd been ignoring it, chalking it up to stress and too much coffee, but lately it had gotten worse. That night, I was working late at the office when the pain hit me like a freight train. I doubled over at my desk, gasping, unable to breathe. My coworker, Jennifer Santos, found me hunched over, pale and sweating. "Amelia! Oh my God, I'm calling 911. No, I'm fine," I managed to choke out, but even I didn't believe it. The pain was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Sharp, stabbing, radiating through my entire abdomen. Jennifer ignored my protests and called for an ambulance. The next hour was a blur of EMTs, sirens, and fluorescent hospital lights. I remember being wheeled into the emergency room at Seattle Memorial Hospital, nurses hovering over me, asking questions I could barely answer through the pain. "We need to run some tests," a young doctor with kind eyes told me. "It could be appendicitis, but we need to be sure." They hooked me up to monitors, drew blood, and sent me for a CT scan. I lay there on the cold examination table trying to call my parents, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. I texted them. "In ER. Severe pain. Please call." No response. I tried Chloe next. Same result. The doctor came back an hour later, his expression grave. "Ms. Garcia, your appendix has ruptured. We need to get you into surgery immediately. This is a medical emergency. If we don't operate now, you could develop peritonitis, which can be life-threatening." My heart hammered in my chest. "How serious is this?" "Very serious. A ruptured appendix can lead to sepsis if the infection spreads. We need your consent to proceed with emergency surgery." I signed the consent forms with shaking hands, still trying to reach my family. Where were they? Why weren't they answering? I left a voicemail for my mom. "Mom, it's me. I'm having emergency surgery. My appendix ruptured. I'm scared. Please come." The anesthesiologist came in to prep me, explaining what would happen. I remember the cold sting of the IV, the strange floating sensation as the drugs took effect, and then nothing. When I woke up, the world was fuzzy and distorted. My throat was dry, my abdomen throbbed with a dull, persistent ache, and I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. I blinked slowly, trying to orient myself. I was in a recovery room, monitors beeping softly beside me, an IV line running into my arm, and I was alone. I fumbled for the call button, my fingers clumsy and uncooperative. A nurse came in, a middle-aged woman with gentle hands and a warm smile. "Welcome back, sweetie." "How are you feeling?" "Sore," I croaked. "My family?" Are they here? Her smile faltered slightly. Let me check with the front desk for you. She left, and I lay there staring at the ceiling tiles, counting them to distract myself from the pain and the growing knot of anxiety in my chest. The nurse returned a few minutes later, her expression carefully neutral. There's no one in the waiting room for you, hun. Do you want me to try calling someone? I already called them. Before the surgery, my voice cracked. They should be here. She squeezed my hand. Sometimes people don't get messages right away. I'm sure they'll be here soon. You just rest now. The surgery went well, but you need to take it easy. But they didn't come. Not that evening, not that night. I drifted in and out of sleep, waking periodically to check my phone. No messages, no missed calls, nothing. The next morning, I finally got through to my mom. Amelia, oh, honey, we just got your messages. We were at Chloe's engagement party last night, the big one at the Fairmont. You know, the one with all of Brandon's family? We had our phones on silent because it would have been rude to be checking them during the speeches. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom, I had emergency surgery. My appendix ruptured. I could have died. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Amelia. You're fine now, aren't you? The doctors took care of it. We couldn't just leave Chloe's party. You know how important this is to her. Brandon's parents flew in from New York specifically for this. It would have been mortifying to leave early. My mouth went dry. I was scared, Mom. I was alone. You're a grown woman, Amelia. You can handle yourself. Besides, we're coming to see you now. We'll be there in an hour or so. We just need to stop by the venue to settle the bill first. She hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone, tears streaming down my face. The physical pain was nothing compared to the realization that I had just experienced. My parents had prioritized my sister's engagement party over my life-threatening medical emergency. They had chosen champagne and speeches over being there when I needed them most. But what happened next would change everything I thought I knew about my life, my family, and the man I'd spent 5 years trying to forget. The door to my room opened, and in walked the surgeon who had operated on me. He was tall, with dark hair starting to silver at the temples, wearing surgical scrubs and a white coat. He was looking down at a tablet reviewing my chart. Ms. Garcia, I'm Dr. Patrick. He looked up, and the tablet nearly slipped from his hands. We stared at each other, frozen in a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity. It was Patrick. Patrick Sullivan, my ex-husband, the man I had married 8 years ago in a small ceremony in Portland. The man I had loved with every fiber of my being. The man who had disappeared from my life 5 years ago without a word, without a trace, leaving me with nothing but questions and a divorce petition that had arrived in the mail 6 months later. And now here he was, standing in my hospital room, the man who had just cut me open and saved my life, looking at me like he'd seen a ghost. Amelia, he whispered, his voice hoarse. What? How? I couldn't speak. My mind was reeling, trying to process the impossibility of this moment, of all the hospitals in Seattle, of all the surgeons who could have operated on me. It had been him. He recovered first, his professional mask sliding back into place, though I could see his hands trembling slightly as he gripped the tablet. I didn't know you were my patient. The intake form just said A, Garcia. I didn't... He trailed off, running a hand through his hair, a gesture I remembered so well from our years together. You saved my life, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I did my job. His tone was careful, measured. The surgery went well. We removed your appendix and cleaned out the infection. You're going to need to stay here for a few days for observation and IV antibiotics, but you should make a full recovery. We stood there in awkward silence. 5 years of unanswered questions hanging between us like a curtain neither of us knew how to pull back. Patrick, where did you... I can't do this right now, he said abruptly, backing toward the door. I'll have Dr. Mitchell take over your post-operative care. You're in good hands. Wait, but he was gone, leaving me alone again with the pain in my abdomen and the even deeper ache in my chest where old wounds had just been torn wide open. An hour later, my parents finally showed up. They walked into my hospital room like they were arriving at a casual brunch, my mom carrying a small bouquet of grocery store flowers and my dad checking his watch. "There's our girl," my dad, John, said with forced cheerfulness. "See? You're looking much better already." A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. My mom set the flowers on the bedside table and kissed my forehead. "The party was absolutely spectacular, Amelia. You should have seen Chloe's face when Brandon's mother gave that toast. Everyone was in tears. It was magical." I stared at them, unable to comprehend what I was hearing. I had just come out of emergency surgery, and they were talking about party toasts. "Mom, I almost died." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, honey, the doctors handled it. That's what they're here for. You're being dramatic. Besides, you're fine now. A ruptured appendix is common. Jennifer Caldwell's daughter had one last year, and she was back at work in a week." "I needed you here," I said, my voice breaking. I was terrified. I was alone. My dad shifted uncomfortably. "Amelia, we're here now. Let's not make this into something it isn't. Your sister's engagement party was a once-in-a-lifetime event. We couldn't just abandon her. You understand that, don't you?" Before I could respond, Chloe burst through the door, her phone in hand, barely glancing at me. "Mom, Brandon's mom wants to know if we prefer the ivory or champagne linens for the reception tables. She needs an answer by tonight." Then, as an afterthought, she looked at me. "Oh, hey, Amelia. Feeling okay?" "I had emergency surgery," I said flatly. "Yeah, Mom told me." "That sucks." She turned back to our mother. "So, ivory or champagne?" I felt something inside me crack. This was my family. These were the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, who were supposed to drop everything when I needed them. And yet, here they were, more concerned about table linens than the fact that I had been fighting for my life less than 24 hours ago. "Actually, I need to talk to all of you about something," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "The surgeon who operated on me—" It was Patrick. The room went silent. My mother's face paled, my father's jaw clenched, and Chloe finally looked up from her phone. "Patrick?" my mom whispered. "You're Patrick?" "Yes, Patrick Sullivan. My ex-husband who disappeared 5 years ago without a trace." My dad's expression hardened. "What the hell is he doing here? Did he know you were his patient?" "No, he didn't know until after the surgery. But, Dad, this is my chance to finally get answers. To find out why he left, where he's been." "Absolutely not," my mother interrupted sharply. "Amelia, that man destroyed you. We spent years watching you put yourself back together after he abandoned you. You are not opening that door again. Mom, I need closure." "I need to understand." "There's nothing to understand," she snapped. "He left because he was selfish and cruel. End of story. You need to focus on your recovery and move on." Again. Chloe was biting her lip, looking uncomfortable. "This is really bad timing, Amelia. The wedding is in 4 months, and we need you focused. You're my maid of honor. I can't have you falling apart over some guy who didn't even care enough to say goodbye." I felt tears burning my eyes, but I blinked them back. "This isn't about your wedding, Chloe. This is about my life." "Everything is about the wedding right now," she shot back. "I'm sorry you're going through this, but can't you just deal with it after, please?" My father stood up, his voice firm. "Your mother's right. You need to request a different doctor immediately. There's no reason for you to have any contact with Patrick Sullivan. Let sleeping dogs lie, Amelia." They left shortly after, taking their grocery store flowers with them because my mom decided they'd look better on Chloe's dining table. I watched them go, feeling more alone than I had when I woke up after surgery. But I couldn't stop thinking about Patrick, about the way his hands had trembled when he saw me, about the pain in his eyes before he masked it with professional detachment, about 5 years of silence and unanswered questions. That evening, there was a soft knock on my door. I expected a nurse, but instead, Patrick stepped into the room, still in his scrubs, looking exhausted. "I know I said Dr. Mitchell would take over your care," he began, "but I couldn't leave things like this. You deserve an explanation. Or at least as much of one as I can give you. My heart was pounding. Why did you leave, Patrick? Why did you just disappear? He pulled a chair close to my bed and sat down, his elbows on his knees, his head in his hands. When he finally looked up at me, there were tears in his eyes. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you, Amelia. I left because I was dying. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 3 brain cancer, a glioblastoma. The doctors gave me 6 months, maybe a year, with aggressive treatment. I was terrified, and I made what I thought was the right choice at the time. I couldn't breathe. You had cancer? And you didn't tell me? I couldn't watch you sacrifice your life to take care of me. You were 28 years old, brilliant, with your whole career ahead of you. I knew you'd put everything on hold. You'd spend every moment by my bedside, watching me deteriorate, and I couldn't do that to you. That wasn't your decision to make, I cried, anger and grief crashing over me in waves. I was your wife. I loved you. You should have let me choose. I know, he said, his voice breaking. I know that now. But at the time, I thought I was protecting you. I thought you'd grieve for a while and then move on, build a beautiful life without me. I thought disappearing would be easier than making you watch me die. So you just left? You filed for divorce and vanished? I went to a clinical trial in Boston. Experimental treatment. The doctors there didn't think it would work. The survival rate was less than 5%. I said goodbye to everything I loved because I was certain I wouldn't survive to see the end of that year. But you did survive, I whispered. He nodded, wiping his eyes. Against all odds. The treatment worked. It took 3 years of surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, and more procedures than I can count. I lost everything, my hair, my weight, my strength. There were days I wished I'd just let the cancer take me. But I survived. And you never thought to contact me? To tell me you were alive? Every single day, he said hoarsely. Every day I wanted to call you, to tell you I was okay. But 2 years had passed. Then 3. I figured you'd moved on, found someone else, built the life I wanted you to have. What right did I have to walk back into your life and disrupt it? What if you were happy? What if seeing me again only brought back pain? I was sobbing now, unable to hold back the flood of emotions. You broke my heart, Patrick. You shattered me. I spent years thinking I'd done something wrong, that I hadn't been enough, that you'd stopped loving me. I never stopped loving you, he said, reaching for my hand. Not for one single second. You were the reason I fought to survive. The thought of you, the memory of your smile, your laugh. That's what kept me going through every horrible moment of that treatment. We sat there in silence, his hand holding mine. 5 years of pain and misunderstanding finally laid bare between us. I moved back to Seattle 6 months ago, he continued. I took the position here at the hospital, started rebuilding my life. I thought about looking you up, but I was too afraid. And then you ended up on my operating table, and I realized that maybe fate was giving us a second chance, or maybe it was just cruel irony. I don't know what to do with this information, I admitted. I'm angry at you for leaving. I'm devastated that you went through all of that alone. I'm relieved you're alive. I'm confused about what happens now. You don't have to do anything, Patrick said gently. I just needed you to know the truth. I owed you that much. What you do with it is entirely up to you. He stood to leave, but I tightened my grip on his hand. Stay, I whispered. Just for a little while, please. He sat back down, and we stayed like that for hours, talking about everything and nothing, carefully navigating the minefield of our shared past. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning. What I didn't know was that my family had been listening outside the door the entire time, and they were not happy about what they'd heard. The next morning, I woke to find my entire family crowded into my hospital room. The energy was different, tense, almost hostile. My mother stood at the foot of my bed with her arms crossed, my father by the window with a grim expression, and Chloe perched on the chair, looking nervous. We need to talk, my mother announced. I struggled to sit up, wincing at the pain from my incision. About what? About the mistake you're about to make, my father said. We heard you last night with Patrick. My blood ran cold. You were listening outside my door? We came to check on you and heard voices, my mother said, not even having the decency to look ashamed. Amelia, you cannot seriously be considering letting that man back into your life. That's my decision to make. No, it's not, Chloe interjected. Not when it affects all of us. Do you have any idea what it was like watching you fall apart after he left? Mom had to take time off work to stay with you because you couldn't function. Dad paid for your therapy sessions for 2 years. I postponed my semester abroad because you needed me. I stared at my sister in disbelief. You're holding that against me? I was grieving. And we supported you through it, my mother cut in. We picked up the pieces. We helped you rebuild your life. And now you want to throw all of that away for some sob story about cancer? He still left you, Amelia. He still chose to handle it alone instead of trusting you with the truth. He was scared, I said, hearing how weak it sounded even as the words left my mouth. He thought he was protecting me. My father laughed bitterly. Protecting you? He destroyed you, and now he wants back in because he survived? That's convenient. Where was he when you cried yourself to sleep for months? Where was he when you had to sign those divorce papers alone? Where was he when you needed him? Each question felt like a knife twisting in my chest because they were right. Patrick had made that choice without me. He'd decided what I could and couldn't handle, what I deserved to know. He'd robbed me of the chance to fight alongside him, to be there during the hardest moments of his life. I haven't decided anything, I said quietly. I'm just trying to process everything. Well, process this, Chloe said, pulling out her phone and showing me a photo. Brandon and I set the wedding date, June 14th. We've already booked the venue, the caterer, and the photographer. I need my maid of honor to be present, Amelia. Mentally and emotionally present. Not distracted by some reconciliation drama with your ex-husband. Chloe, that's 4 months away. This has nothing to do with your wedding. Everything you do affects this wedding. She snapped, standing up. Don't you get it? This is the most important day of my life, and I need you to be there for me. Not falling back into old patterns with Patrick. Not creating family drama. Just being my sister and supporting me for once. For once? I repeated, feeling anger rising in my chest. I've done nothing but support you my entire life. I was there for every dance recital, every graduation, every breakup. I helped you move into your apartment. I introduced you to half your friend group. When have I ever not been there for you? You're being there physically, but you're never really present, Chloe said, tears in her eyes. You're always so wrapped up in your own problems, your own pain. Do you know how exhausting it is to constantly worry about you? The words hung in the air between us, and I felt something fundamental shift in my understanding of my family dynamic. I'd always thought of myself as the responsible older sister, the dependable daughter. But in their eyes, I was the burden, the one who needed to be managed and monitored. I think you all should leave, I said, my voice shaking. I need to rest. Amelia, my mother started. Leave, please. They exchanged glances, and for a moment, I thought they might refuse. But my father nodded and they filed out silently, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the steady beep of the monitors. Over the next 2 days, Patrick checked on me regularly, always professional, always maintaining careful distance. But I could see the questions in his eyes, the hope he was trying to suppress. We made small talk about my recovery, about the hospital, about anything except the elephant in the room. On my 3rd day there, he came in during his evening rounds and found me crying. Amelia, what's wrong? Are you in pain? He was immediately at my side, checking my vitals, his doctor instincts taking over. Not physical pain, I managed to say. My family? They're so angry at me for even talking to you. They act like I'm betraying them by wanting to understand what happened. Patrick handed me a tissue and sat down. They're protecting you. I understand that. But they're not letting me make my own choices. Chloe's making this all about her wedding. My parents are treating me like I'm fragile and incompetent. I'm 33 years old, Patrick. When do I get to live my own life? He was quiet for a moment, then said, Can I tell you something I learned during my treatment? I nodded, wiping my eyes. When I was at my sickest, there was this other patient in the trial. a guy named Marcus. He had a wife, 3 kids, and a whole life waiting for him. And his family was there every single day, crowding into his room, making decisions for him, protecting him from bad news. They meant well, but they were suffocating him. What happened to him? One day, he told them all to leave. Said he needed space to breathe, to process things on his own terms. They were hurt, angry even. But it was the best thing he could have done. He needed to face his mortality himself, not through the filter of everyone else's fear and expectations. Did he survive? Patrick nodded. He did. And he told me later that setting that boundary saved his life in more ways than one. It taught his family to trust him, to respect his autonomy even in his darkest moments. I understood what he was saying. You think I need to set boundaries with my family. I think you need to decide what you want, independent of what they want for you. And I think you need to give yourself permission to be angry at me, to ask me the hard questions, to take all the time you need to figure out if there's any path forward for us. Are you saying you want there to be a path forward? He looked at me with such raw honesty that it took my breath away. I'm saying that operating on you, seeing you again after 5 years, reminded me of what I lost. What I gave up. I thought I was doing the noble thing by walking away, but all I did was hurt us both. If there's even the smallest chance that we could rebuild what we had, or build something new, I want to try. But only if you do. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Chloe. Family dinner Sunday at Mom and Dad's. You're expected. We need to discuss the wedding. Don't bring Patrick. I showed him the message, and he smiled sadly. Looks like you've got some decisions to make. Patrick, when you were going through treatment, were you scared? Terrified. Every single day. I wish I could have been there. I wish you'd let me hold your hand through it. His eyes glistened with unshed tears. That's my biggest regret. Not the cancer, not the treatment, but robbing you of the choice to stand by me. I'll carry that for the rest of my life. I'm scared too, I admitted. Scared of getting hurt again. Scared of what it means if I forgive you. Scared of what my family will do if I choose you over their expectations. You shouldn't have to choose, he said gently. A family that truly loves you would want you to be happy, even if they don't understand your choices. After he left, I lay awake thinking about everything. About the little girl who'd always tried to be perfect for her parents. About the sister who'd always put Chloe's needs before her own. About the wife who'd been abandoned without explanation. About the woman I was now, lying in a hospital bed, finally seeing clearly for the first time in years. My family had been there for me after Patrick left. That was true. But they'd also reshaped me into someone manageable, someone who wouldn't rock the boat or make waves, someone who existed to support Chloe's dreams while putting her own on hold, and I was done being that person. The next morning, I was cleared for discharge. Patrick came to give me my final instructions and prescriptions, still maintaining that careful professional boundary. Take it easy for the next 2 weeks, he said. No heavy lifting, no strenuous activity. If you experience fever, increased pain, or any unusual symptoms, call immediately. Dr. Sullivan, I said formally, and watched confusion flicker across his face at my use of his title. Would you be willing to meet me for coffee? Once I'm fully recovered, not as my doctor, but as 2 people who need to finish a conversation. The hope that bloomed in his expression was almost painful to witness. I'd like that. Very much. I'm not making any promises, I warned. I need time to think, to process everything. And I need to have some difficult conversations with my family. I understand. Take all the time you need. I've waited 5 years. I can wait a little longer. He wrote his personal cell phone number on a piece of paper and handed it to me. Our fingers brushed, and I felt that old familiar spark, the one that had drawn us together 8 years ago, the one that had never quite died despite everything. As I left the hospital, I knew the hardest part was still ahead. Because Sunday's family dinner was going to change everything, and I was ready to let it go. Sunday arrived faster than I wanted it to. I stood outside my parents' house in the suburbs of Bellevue, staring at the familiar red door, gathering courage. Through the window, I could see Chloe setting the table while my mother bustled around the kitchen. This was the house where I'd grown up, where I'd learned to ride a bike in the driveway, where I'd celebrated every holiday and milestone. It should have felt like home. Instead, it felt like walking into a courtroom where the verdict had already been decided. I rang the doorbell, and my father answered, giving me a tight hug. "There's our girl. How are you feeling?" "Better. Still sore but managing." Inside, the smell of my mother's pot roast filled the air. Under normal circumstances, this would have been comforting. Today, it felt like a trap disguised as normalcy. Dinner started pleasantly enough. We talked about Chloe's job at the marketing firm, about my father's upcoming retirement, about anything safe and neutral. But I could feel the tension building with every passing minute, everyone waiting for the other shoe to drop. Finally, over dessert, my mother set down her fork and looked directly at me. "So, Amelia, have you given any more thought to what we discussed at the hospital?" "About Patrick?" I said, refusing to dance around it. Chloe groaned. "Mom, can we not do this today?" I wanted to show everyone the venue photos. "This is important, Chloe," my mother interrupted. "Your sister's about to make a huge mistake, and we need to address it." "I haven't made any decisions yet," I said calmly. "I'm still processing everything." "What's there to process?" My father asked, his voice rising. "The man abandoned you. Cancer or no cancer, he made a choice to exclude you from the most important crisis of his life. That shows a fundamental lack of trust and partnership." "He was dying, Dad. People make irrational decisions when they're facing death." "So you're defending him now?" Chloe said incredulously. "After everything we went through?" "What did you go through?" I set my coffee cup down, feeling anger simmer beneath my carefully controlled exterior. "Let's be clear about something. Patrick left me, and yes, that was devastating. But my grief, my healing, that was mine to navigate. You all acted like my breakdown was this terrible burden you had to carry." My mother's face flushed. "That's not fair, Amelia. We were worried sick about you. You stopped eating, stopped going to work. We had to intervene. And I'm grateful for that," I said. "But you've been holding it over my head ever since. Every time I make a choice you don't agree with, I hear about how fragile I am, how much you've sacrificed, how I need to think about the family." "That's what families do," my father said firmly. "We support each other. We make sacrifices. But it only goes one way, doesn't it?" The words came out before I could stop them. "I sacrifice for Chloe's dreams, for your expectations, for everyone's comfort. But when I need something, really need something, where are you?" "That's ridiculous," Chloe snapped. "We're always here for you." "You left me bleeding in a hospital bed to go to an engagement party," I said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's face paled. "Amelia, we explained, you prioritized table settings and speeches over being there when I came out of emergency surgery. I was scared and alone, and you chose champagne toasts." "We came as soon as we could," my father protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "No, you came when it was convenient. After the party, after settling the bill, after making sure Chloe's perfect night wasn't disrupted by your other daughter's medical emergency." Chloe stood up, tears streaming down her face. "How dare you? How dare you make this about you? Do you have any idea how much pressure I'm under? Planning a wedding is incredibly stressful, and all you can think about is yourself." "I almost died, Chloe." I was standing now too, my voice breaking. My appendix ruptured. I could have developed sepsis, gone into shock, died on that operating table. "And you're talking about wedding stress?" "Girls, please," my mother started. "No, Mom, I'm done being quiet about this." I turned to face all of them. "I've spent my entire life trying to be the perfect daughter, the perfect sister. I made myself small so Chloe could shine. I swallowed my own dreams and ambitions because her needs always came first. And I accepted it because I thought that's what love was." "You're being dramatic," my father said dismissively. "Am I? Tell me, Dad, when was the last time you asked about my career? My goals? When was the last time any of you celebrated something I accomplished without immediately pivoting to what Chloe was doing? They were all staring at me like I'd grown a second head. I got promoted to senior account manager last year, I continued. Did any of you even know that? I closed $1 million deal in September. I was featured in Seattle Business Monthly. And none of you said a word because the same week Chloe got engaged and that was all that mattered. My mother's eyes widened. Amelia, we didn't know because you didn't ask. You never ask. Chloe sank back into her chair, her face crumpling. That's not true. We care about your life. You care about the version of my life that doesn't inconvenience you, I said, more gently now. And I let it happen. I enabled it because I was afraid of rocking the boat, of not being needed, of being alone. So what are you saying? My mother asked, her voice trembling. That we're bad parents? That we don't love you? I'm saying that love isn't supposed to come with conditions. It's not supposed to require me to shrink myself to make room for everyone else's happiness. And I'm saying that I'm tired of living my life based on your expectations instead of my own choices. My father stood up, his jaw clenched. If this is about Patrick Sullivan, then you need to hear this. He's using you. He feels guilty about what he did, and he's trying to ease his conscience by weaseling his way back into your life. Don't be naive, Amelia. Maybe he is, I admitted. Or maybe he's genuinely sorry and wants a second chance. But the point is, it's my decision to make, not yours. Whether I forgive him or tell him to go to hell, that choice belongs to me. Even if it's the wrong choice, my mother whispered. Even then, because at least it will be mine. Chloe wiped her eyes, her voice small. So what does this mean for the wedding? Are you still going to be my maid of honor? I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw past the bridezilla exterior to the insecure woman underneath. She wasn't just stressed about the wedding. She was terrified of losing control, of something going wrong, of not being the center of attention for even a moment. I'll be your maid of honor, I said softly, because I love you and I want to support you on your big day. But I need you to understand something, Chloe. Your wedding is one day. My life is every day, and I can't keep putting my happiness on hold for yours. I never asked you to, she protested weakly. You didn't have to ask. I offered it freely, and you took it without question. But that's ending now. My father shook his head. This family is falling apart. No, Dad. This family is finally being honest with each other. There's a difference. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, then paused and turned back. I'm having coffee with Patrick next week. I don't know what will come of it. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. But I'm going to find out. And I'm going to make my own decision about what I want my future to look like. I hope you can respect that, but even if you can't, I'm doing it anyway. As I walked to my car, I heard the door open behind me. Chloe ran out, catching me in the driveway. Wait, she called, breathless. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Amelia. I turned to face her, seeing genuine remorse in her eyes for the first time. I've been selfish, she admitted, tears streaming down her face. You're right about everything. I've taken you for granted, and I've been so wrapped up in wedding planning that I forgot what actually matters. You could have died and I acted like it was an inconvenience. What kind of person does that? A scared person, I said gently. A person who's been taught that her worth is tied to big moments and perfect events instead of genuine connection. Mom and Dad really messed us both up, didn't they? She said with a sad laugh. Yeah, they did. She hugged me tightly, careful of my still healing incision. Go have coffee with Patrick. Figure out what you want, and whatever you decide, I'll support you. I promise. Even if it means less attention on your wedding? Even then, she pulled back, wiping her eyes. You were right. My wedding is one day. Having my sister in my life matters more than having the perfect bridal party. We talked for another 20 minutes in the driveway. Really talked, in a way we hadn't in years. By the time I drove home, something had shifted between us. It wasn't perfect, and years of patterns wouldn't disappear overnight, but it was a start. That night, I lay in bed staring at Patrick's phone number. My thumb hovered over the call button for 10 minutes before I finally pressed it. He answered on the second ring. Amelia. Hi, I had that family dinner. How did it go? About as well as a bomb detonation, but I think it needs to happen. He was quiet for a moment, then said, I'm proud of you. You don't even know what I said. I know you well enough to know that standing up for yourself terrifies you. The fact that you did it anyway? That's brave. Tears pricked my eyes. He did still know me, even after 5 years apart. Coffee on Saturday? I asked. I'll be there. As I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not certainty, not security, but genuine hope that maybe, just maybe, I could build a life on my own terms. Whatever happened next, I was finally ready to face it. Saturday morning arrived with gray Seattle skies and a light drizzle that matched my nervous energy. I changed outfits 3 times before settling on jeans and a simple sweater. Nothing too formal, nothing that screamed, "I'm trying too hard." This was just coffee. Just a conversation, except it wasn't, and we both knew it. I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early, a small place called Moonlight Brews in Capitol Hill that hadn't existed when Patrick and I were married. Neutral territory, no memories lurking in corners, no ghosts of who we used to be. He walked in exactly on time, and my breath caught. He looked different in civilian clothes, just a gray Henley and dark jeans, more like the Patrick I'd married and less like Dr. Sullivan, the surgeon who'd saved my life. His hair was damp from the rain, and he carried that same nervous energy I felt coiling in my stomach. "Hi," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Hi." We ordered coffee, made awkward small talk about the weather, and then fell into silence, neither of us knowing how to bridge the chasm between us. Finally, I said, "I have questions. A lot of them, and I need you to be completely honest with me, even if the truth hurts." "Anything," he promised. "When you were sick, when you were going through treatment, did you ever think about coming back? Even once?" He took a slow sip of his coffee, choosing his words carefully. "Every single day, but especially during the worst moments. There was one night after a particularly brutal round of chemo when I was so sick I could barely move. I had my phone in my hand, your number pulled up, and I just stared at it for hours. Why didn't you call? Because it was 3 a.m, and I was at my absolute lowest. I looked like death. I felt like death, and I was terrified that if I heard your voice, I'd beg you to come save me. And that would have been cruel, to pull you back into my life just to watch me die." I wrapped my hands around my mug, feeling the warmth seep into my palms. "You keep saying you thought you were protecting me. But Patrick, you took away my agency. You decided what I could handle without asking me. I know. Do you? Because that's not love. That's control dressed up as sacrifice." He flinched but didn't look away. "You're right. I was arrogant enough to think I knew what was best for you. I was so focused on sparing you pain that I didn't consider that the abandonment might hurt more than the truth ever could have." "It did," I said quietly. "It destroyed me in ways I'm still unpacking. I blamed myself, thought I wasn't enough, that I'd failed as a wife. Do you know what that does to a person? I can't begin to imagine the damage I caused. But Amelia, I need you to understand. It wasn't about you not being enough. You were everything. You were the only good thing in my life, and I couldn't stand the thought of watching your light dim while you took care of me." "That wasn't your choice to make," I repeated, my voice firmer now. "You're absolutely right. And if I could go back and do it differently, I would in a heartbeat. I'd tell you about the diagnosis. I'd let you hold my hand through every appointment, every treatment, every terrifying moment. I'd trust you the way you deserve to be trusted." A couple at the next table laughed at something on their phone, the sound jarring against the weight of our conversation. "Tell me about Boston," I said. "What was the treatment like?" For the next hour, Patrick walked me through those 3 years. The clinical trial at Massachusetts General Hospital that accepted him when every other doctor had written him off. The experimental drug combination that made him violently ill but slowly shrank the tumor. The surgeries, plural, to remove what the chemo couldn't kill. The radiation that left him with permanent nerve damage in his left hand. "I learned to operate again," he said, flexing his fingers. "Took 6 months of physical therapy, but I refused to let cancer take that from me too. Surgery was the only thing I had left. What about friends? Support system? There was a group of us in the trial. Marcus, who I told you about. A woman named Sarah, who was a teacher from Vermont. A kid named Tommy, who was only 19. We became each other's family because most of us had pushed our real families away. Did they all make it? His face clouded. Marcus did. Sarah did. Tommy didn't. He died 6 weeks before the trial ended, right when we thought he was finally turning a corner. His parents hadn't spoken to him in a year because he'd pushed them away like I pushed you away. They never got to say goodbye. I'm sorry. Tommy's death was my wake-up call. I realized that I'd been so afraid of you grieving me that I'd created a different kind of grief. The grief of not knowing, of questions without answers. At least if I'd told you the truth, you would have had closure one way or another. I studied his face, seeing new lines around his eyes, a weariness that hadn't been there before. Cancer had aged him, but there was something else too, a depth, a gravity that came from staring down mortality and coming out the other side. Are you in remission? I asked. 5 years clear as of last month. Statistically, that means I'm likely cured, though my oncologist insists we can never use that word with glioblastomas. I have scans every 6 months to make sure it hasn't come back. The weight of that hit me. Even now, even after everything, there was no guarantee. The cancer could return at any time. Does that scare you? Every day. But not as much as the regret of losing you scared me. When you ended up on my operating table, and I realized I had the power to save your life after failing you so completely before, it felt like the universe was giving me one more chance. Not to be with you, I didn't dare hope for that, but to at least give you the truth I should have given you 5 years ago. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said honestly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What you did damaged me in fundamental ways. I understand. But I also can't ignore the fact that you were facing death and made a decision out of fear. A terrible decision, but one that came from a place of love, however misguided. He leaned forward, hope flickering in his eyes. What are you saying? I'm saying I need time. I need therapy, probably lots of it. I need to work through the abandonment issues, the trust issues, all of it. And I need you to understand that even if we rebuild some kind of relationship, it might never be what we had before. I'll take whatever you're willing to give, he said. Friendship, acquaintanceship, someone you occasionally nod at in the grocery store, anything is more than I deserve. Despite everything, I smiled. You always were dramatic. Medical trauma tends to enhance that quality. We talked for another 2 hours, long after our coffee went cold. He told me about his work at Seattle Memorial, about the apartment he'd rented in Fremont, about learning to live with the uncertainty of remission. I told him about my promotion, about Chloe's wedding, about the confrontation with my family. Good for you, he said when I finished. Setting boundaries with family is harder than any surgery I've ever performed. Speaking of which, how's your hand really? I gestured to his left hand, which he'd been unconsciously flexing throughout our conversation. Functional, but not perfect. I have some reduced sensation in my fingertips and it aches when it rains. But I adapted. Used my right hand for fine motor work, retrained my muscle memory. The human body is remarkably resilient when you give it a chance. Like relationships? I ventured. I'd like to think so. Though I'm not naive enough to believe we can just pick up where we left off. No, we can't, I agreed. But maybe we can start something new. Something built on honesty this time instead of secrets. His eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I'd like that. Very much. As we left the cafe, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening and fresh. We walked to our cars in companionable silence, something we'd always been good at, finding peace in the quiet moments. Amelia, he called as I reached for my door handle. Thank you for giving me a chance to explain, for listening, for not slamming the door completely shut. I know I don't deserve any of it. Maybe not, I said. But we all deserve second chances. The question is what we do with them. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in weeks. This wasn't closure, not exactly. It was something more complicated. An opening, a possibility, a tentative first step toward something I couldn't yet name. My phone buzzed with a text from Chloe. How did it go? I smiled and typed back, better than expected. We're taking things slow. Her response was immediate. Good. You deserve happiness, sis. Even if it's complicated happiness. That night, I sat down and started writing. Not for work, not for anyone else, but for myself. I wrote about the girl who'd lost herself trying to please everyone. About the woman who'd been abandoned and blamed herself. About the person I was becoming. Someone who chose her own path even when it scared her. The next few weeks would test that resolve in ways I couldn't yet imagine. Because while Patrick and I were carefully rebuilding trust, my parents were about to do something that would force me to make an impossible choice. 2 weeks after that first coffee meeting, I was at work when my phone rang. It was Brandon, Chloe's fiancé, which was odd because we rarely spoke directly. Amelia, we have a problem, he said without preamble. It's about your parents and the wedding. My stomach dropped. What did they do? They're threatening to pull their financial contribution unless you agree to cut Patrick out of your life. Completely. No contact, no coffee meetings, nothing. I sat down hard in my desk chair. They what? Your mom called Chloe this morning. Said that they've been more than generous with the wedding budget. But they can't in good conscience support a celebration when their daughter is making such destructive choices. Their words, not mine. How much are they contributing? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. $40,000. Which is basically half the wedding budget. I closed my eyes. My parents had always been comfortable financially. My dad had been a corporate attorney before retiring. But $40,000 was still substantial. And they knew exactly what they were doing by threatening to withdraw it. What does Chloe want me to do? Brandon was quiet for a moment. Honestly, she's torn. She's terrified of having to scale back the wedding or go into debt, but she also feels guilty about the pressure this puts on you. She's been crying all morning. Can I talk to her? She's actually here. Hold on! I heard muffled voices, then Chloe came on the line, her voice thick with tears. Amelia, I'm so sorry. I told them this was manipulative and wrong, but Mom won't budge. She says she's protecting you. By holding your wedding hostage? That's not protection, Chloe. That's control. I know. And I told Brandon we'd figure out another way, that we'd scale back. But she broke off with a sob. We've already paid deposits on everything. The venue, the caterer, the photographer. We'd lose thousands if we tried to change things now. I felt rage building in my chest, hot and fierce. This is exactly what Mom and Dad do. They manipulate us with money and guilt, and we just accept it because we're afraid of disappointing them. What do we do? Chloe whispered. You do nothing. This is between me and them. Don't let them ruin your wedding, Chloe. I'll handle it. After I hung up, I sat at my desk for 10 minutes, trying to calm down enough to think clearly. Then I called Patrick. Hey, he answered warmly. This is a nice surprise. My parents are blackmailing Chloe, I said bluntly. They're threatening to pull their wedding funding unless I stop seeing you. The silence on his end was deafening. Patrick? I'm here. I'm just processing. He took a shaky breath. Amelia, if my presence in your life is causing this much damage to your family, don't you dare. I cut him off. Don't you dare offer to walk away again. That's not your decision to make, remember? You don't get to decide what's best for me. You're right. I'm sorry. What do you need from me? I need you to understand that things are about to get very ugly. My parents aren't going to back down easily, and I'm about to go to war with them over this. Then I'm right beside you, he said firmly. Whatever you need. That evening I drove to my parents' house unannounced. My mother answered the door, surprise flickering across her face. Amelia! We weren't expecting... We need to talk, now. She stepped aside, and I walked into the living room where my father was watching the news. He looked up, immediately sensing the tension. What's going on? He asked. You tell me, Dad. Since when do you use Chloe's wedding as leverage to control my personal life? My mother's face flushed. We're not trying to control you. We're trying to protect you from making a terrible mistake. By threatening to destroy your other daughter's wedding? How is that protection? We've invested a significant amount of money into that wedding, my father said, his voice cold. Money we earned, money we have every right to allocate as we see fit. If we don't feel comfortable funding a celebration while you're rekindling a relationship with a man who abandoned you, that's our choice. So this is about money. About ownership? This is about consequences, my mother snapped. Actions have consequences, Amelia. If you choose to ignore our concerns and continue down this path with Patrick, then you need to understand that there will be repercussions. I laughed bitterly. Repercussions? You sound like you're punishing a child, not talking to your adult daughter. You're acting like a child, my father shot back, running back to the first man who shows you attention, ignoring all the red flags. Red flags? The man had cancer. He was dying. And he chose to face it alone rather than trust you with the truth, my mother said. That speaks volumes about his character and his view of your marriage. Why can't you see that? I do see it, I said, my voice shaking. I see that he made a terrible decision out of fear. But I also see two people who claim to love me trying to manipulate me into living my life according to their script. Which is worse? My father stood up, his face dark. Watch your tone. We're your parents. And I'm a grown woman who's been paying her own bills, making her own decisions, and living her own life for over a decade. You don't get to weaponize Chloe's happiness to control mine. We're not doing that, my mother protested weakly. Yes, you are. You're holding $40,000 over her head because you can't handle the fact that I'm choosing my own path. And the worst part? You're not even considering what Chloe wants. You're using her as a pawn in your game of control. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We raised you better than this. We taught you self-respect, dignity. You taught me to be obedient, I interrupted. You taught me that love is conditional, that it comes with strings attached. You taught me to make myself smaller so Chloe could be bigger. But you never taught me to stand up for myself, to trust my own judgment, to believe that I deserve happiness on my own terms. So we're bad parents now? My father demanded. After everything we've done for you, all the sacrifices we've made? You made choices, I said. Just like I'm making choices now. The difference is I'm not holding those choices over your head years later. My mother sank onto the couch, her face crumbling. I don't understand how we got here. We used to be such a close family. We were close because I never disagreed with you. The moment I started having my own opinions, my own needs, everything fell apart. That's not closeness, Mom. That's compliance. What do you want from us? My father asked, his voice weary. I want you to fund Chloe's wedding like you promised, without conditions. I want you to trust me to make my own decisions about Patrick, even if you don't agree with them. And I want you to understand that you can't control people through fear and money. And if we can't do that? My mother whispered. I felt my heart breaking, but my resolve held firm. Then I'll pay for half of Chloe's wedding myself. I'll take out a loan if I have to. But I won't be blackmailed into living my life according to your terms. The silence that followed was suffocating. My father stared at me like I was a stranger, and my mother covered her face with her hands. You're choosing him over us, she said through her tears. No, Mom. I'm choosing me. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing what I want, what I need, what I believe is right. And if you can't support that, if you can only love me when I'm obedient and compliant, then that says more about you than it does about me. I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. I love you both, but I can't keep sacrificing my happiness for your approval. I'm done. As I drove away, tears streaming down my face, my phone rang. It was Chloe. Mom just called me, she said. She's furious. She said you disrespected them, that you're tearing the family apart. I know. I'm sorry this is affecting you. Stop, Chloe interrupted. Just stop, Amelia. You have nothing to apologize for. What they did was wrong. And I should have said that from the beginning instead of putting you in the middle. I told them I'd pay for half the wedding if they withdrew their funding. You will not, Chloe said firmly. Brandon and I already talked about it. If Mom and Dad pull their money, we'll scale back. We'll have a smaller wedding or we'll postpone and save up. But we're not letting them manipulate you. Fresh tears spilled down my cheeks. Chloe, you stood up for yourself today. You set boundaries that I should have set years ago. I'm proud of you, Amelia, and I'm sorry I've been part of the problem. You're not, I am. I've let them prioritize me over you our entire lives. I've accepted your sacrifices without question. But that ends now. We're sisters, and that means we support each other. Not just when it's convenient, but especially when it's hard. After we hung up, I pulled over to the side of the road and just cried, for the family I'd lost, for the girl I used to be, for the painful transformation I was going through. But underneath the grief, there was something else. Relief. For the first time in my life, I'd chosen myself. And whatever happened next, I could live with that choice. I texted Patrick. I just told my parents they can't control me anymore. It didn't go well. His response came immediately. I'm so sorry. Do you want company? I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed, yes, please. Because sometimes, having someone in your corner, even someone who'd once left, was exactly what you needed to face the storm ahead. Patrick met me at a quiet park near Green Lake. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, and I sat on a bench watching ducks glide across the water while I waited for him. When he arrived, he didn't say anything at first. He just sat beside me and took my hand, and for a few minutes, that was enough. I told them I wouldn't be controlled anymore, I finally said, and I meant it. But Patrick, I'm terrified. What if they never forgive me? What if I just blew up my entire family over this? Then you'll build a new family, he said gently. One that respects you, values you, and loves you without conditions. Family isn't just blood, Amelia. It's the people who show up for you when it matters. Like you did tonight? Like I should have done 5 years ago. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky darken. Then Patrick said, I need to tell you something. It's important and I don't want to keep anything from you ever again. My heart clenched. Okay, I have a scan scheduled next month. My 6-month check to make sure the cancer hasn't returned. And I'm scared, Amelia. I'm terrified that it'll come back, that I survived all of that just to lose everything again. I squeezed his hand tighter. Do you want me to come with you? He looked at me, vulnerability written across his face. I don't want to burden you. It's not a burden if I'm choosing it, I interrupted. You took that choice away from me once. Don't do it again. Tears welled in his eyes. Yes, I'd like you there. Very much. Then I'll be there. Over the next few weeks, something unexpected happened. My parents didn't withdraw their wedding funding. Instead, they went completely silent. No calls, no texts, no attempts at reconciliation. It was like I'd been erased from their lives. Chloe kept me updated on the wedding plans, always careful not to mention our parents unless I asked. Brandon surprisingly became an ally, calling me occasionally just to check in and make sure I was okay. Your sister talks about you all the time, he told me during one call, about how brave you've been, how much she admires you. I just wanted you to know that. Thank you, Brandon. That means a lot. Patrick and I continued our slow rebuild. Coffee dates turned into dinners. Dinners turned into long walks around the city. We talked about everything, his treatment, my career, our failed marriage, our hopes for the future. We didn't rush, didn't make promises we couldn't keep. We just existed together, learning who we'd become in the 5 years apart. One evening, about a month after my confrontation with my parents, Patrick took me to the hospital's rooftop garden, a peaceful space where staff went to decompress. I used to come up here after difficult surgeries, he said, leading me to a bench overlooking the city lights. It helped me remember why I became a doctor in the first place. Why did you become a doctor? Because I wanted to save people. I wanted to be the person who showed up in someone's darkest moment and gave them hope. He turned to me, his eyes serious. But I failed at that with you. I was supposed to be your partner, your support, and instead I left you when you needed me most. Patrick, let me finish, he said gently. I've spent 5 years living with that failure. And when you ended up on my operating table, I got a chance to save you in the most literal sense. But saving your life wasn't enough. I needed to earn back your trust, to prove that I could be the man you deserved. You don't have to prove anything. Yes, I do. Because love isn't just a feeling, Amelia. It's a choice you make every single day. It's showing up, being honest, respecting your partner's autonomy. It's all the things I failed to do before. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. My heart stopped. This isn't what you think, he said quickly, seeing my expression. I know we're not there yet. We might never be there again, and I accept that. But I wanted to give you this. He opened the box, revealing a delicate silver bracelet with a small charm, a lotus flower. In Buddhism, the lotus represents rebirth and resilience, he explained. It grows in muddy water but blooms into something beautiful. That's you, Amelia. Despite everything I put you through, despite your family's treatment, you're blooming. You're becoming who you were always meant to be. Tears streamed down my face as he fastened the bracelet around my wrist. It's beautiful. So are you. And whether we end up together or just as friends, I want you to remember that you're strong enough to face anything. You prove that by standing up to your parents, by setting boundaries, by choosing yourself. I kissed him then, not the passionate kiss of our youth, but something deeper, more intentional. A kiss that acknowledged our shared pain and the long road ahead. I'm not ready to remarry you, I whispered against his lips. I might never be ready for that. No, but I'm willing to see where this goes. Slowly, carefully, with complete honesty. That's all I could ever ask for. The wedding arrived on a perfect June day. Chloe looked stunning in her dress, and Brandon couldn't stop crying during the ceremony. I stood beside my sister as her maid of honor, watching her promise forever to someone who genuinely loved her. My parents were there, of course. They acknowledged me with stiff nods but didn't speak to me directly. During the reception, I watched them laugh and dance and play the role of proud parents, and I felt nothing. No anger, no hurt. Just a peaceful acceptance that some relationships couldn't be saved. Patrick wasn't there. We'd agreed that his presence would create unnecessary drama, but he texted me throughout the evening. How's it going? Is Chloe happy? Remember to eat something besides cake. During the father-daughter dance, Chloe surprised everyone by stopping the music halfway through. I know this is unconventional, she said into the microphone, but there's someone else I need to dance with. Amelia, could you come here? Confused, I made my way to the dance floor as a new song started, Count on Me by Bruno Mars. The song we'd loved as kids. Chloe hugged me tight, whispering in my ear, "Thank you for teaching me what real strength looks like. Thank you for showing me that it's okay to choose yourself. I love you." We danced, crying and laughing while the guests watched. I saw my mother dab at her eyes with a tissue, and for a moment, I wondered if there was hope for us. But then she looked away and I understood. Some bridges couldn't be rebuilt, and that was okay. A week later, I accompanied Patrick to his scan results appointment. We sat in the waiting room, his leg bouncing nervously, my hand gripping his. "Whatever happens," he started. "Don't," I said. "We'll deal with whatever comes together." Dr. Helen Martinez, his oncologist, called us back. She was a small woman with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor that immediately put me at ease. "Patrick, Amelia," she greeted us, gesturing to chairs. "I have good news. The scans are completely clear. No signs of recurrence, no abnormalities. You remain in full remission." Patrick's entire body sagged with relief, and I realized I'd been holding my breath. Dr. Martinez continued, "We'll keep monitoring every 6 months, but your prognosis is excellent. You beat the odds, Patrick." As we left the hospital, Patrick pulled me into a fierce hug. "Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving me another chance." "Thank you for letting me," I replied. 3 months later, my parents reached out, not to apologize or reconcile, but to inform me that they were moving to Arizona to be closer to my dad's sister. The message was formal, distant, delivered via email like a business transaction. Chloe called immediately after. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," I said, surprised to realize I meant it. "I think I am. They're making a mistake. Losing you is their loss. Maybe. But I can't force them to see that. All I can do is live my life and hope that someday they'll realize what they gave up. Patrick and I continued building our relationship, brick by careful brick. We went to couples therapy to address our past trauma. We had difficult conversations about trust and communication. We learned to be vulnerable with each other in ways we'd never managed before. 1 year after that day in the hospital, Patrick and I stood in that same rooftop garden where he'd given me the lotus bracelet. "I have something to ask you," he said, and my heart raced. "I'm listening. Move in with me. Not because we're rushing anything, but because I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to build a life with you, slowly and intentionally. No secrets, no running, just us figuring it out together." I thought about the girl I'd been, desperate for her parents' approval, willing to sacrifice everything for her sister's happiness, terrified of taking up space. And I thought about the woman I'd become, someone who set boundaries, who chose herself, who understood that real love meant partnership, not control. "Yes," I said. "Let's build something new together." As the sun set over Seattle, Patrick kissed me, and I felt the weight of the past finally lifting. My family had left me bleeding after surgery for a party that didn't matter. But in that hospital room, I'd found something more valuable than their approval. I'd found myself, and sometimes that's exactly what you need to lose in order to truly live. 6 months later, Chloe texted me a photo. It was her baby's ultrasound. "You're going to be an aunt, and I want you in this baby's life completely. You're going to be the cool aunt who teaches her to stand up for herself." I smiled, touching the lotus charm on my bracelet. Life had a funny way of taking away with one hand and giving with the other. I'd lost my parents' approval but gained self-respect. I'd lost the fantasy of a perfect family but found genuine connection with my sister. I'd lost the marriage I thought I had but built something stronger in its place. And as Patrick came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and asking about dinner plans, I realized something important. Happiness isn't about having a perfect family or a fairy tale ending. It's about choosing people who choose you back, who respect your boundaries, who show up even when it's hard. The surgeon who'd saved my life had turned out to be my husband. But more importantly, he'd become my partner in the truest sense, someone who valued my voice, my choices, my autonomy. And that was worth more than any perfect family photo could ever be. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own happiness? Let me know your story. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.